Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining what is the 25th Nexus Gains talk. This one's entitled Reversing Groundwater Depletion in Northwest India, Insights from Agronomic Interventions and Potential Opportunities. As we know, or many of us know, that depleting and falling groundwater levels are a major challenge for water resources management around in different places around the globe. So in the US, in the Middle East, in China, and across a lot of South Asia, falling water tables are causing uh, a big headache for water resource managers and increasingly for farmers who are having to pump water from increasing depths. This is a nexus issue because a lot of energy is actually utilized in pumping that water, and greenhouse gas emissions are also increased as a consequence of that pumping. The groundwater table in northwest India is dropping at a rate of about 3 meters per year. And this is largely a consequence of intensive irrigated paddy cultivation. So IRRI have been doing this research looking at how or what interventions could be made to reduce and reverse those falling water tables. They've been looking at different production practices and how this can enhance food security and water security simultaneously. And one agronomic intervention that they've been looking at, and which is quite widely promoted in India, is direct seeded rice, or DSR, in which the rice seeds are directly sown in the soil. In theory, direct seeded rice reduces the length of the growing season, the crop cycle. It reduces the amount of water needed, and compared to conventional huddled transplanted rice. Additional potential benefits are reduced labor, reduced methane emissions, and lower investment costs. They've also been looking at diversification of crops to see how that would impact on water use as well. And so this talk today is just to present some of the results and the findings from this research that IRRI and partners have been conducting. The format of the talk will be the same as we normally do. There'll be two presentations from IRRI researchers, and that will then be followed by a panel discussion, and if there's time at the end, some Q&A. So please, if you do have questions, please put your questions into the Q&A. I'm afraid there's no opportunity for actually verbal interventions, but we can look at the questions and we will pose those questions to the presenters. So to start, I'd just like to introduce the two speakers. The first is Praloy Deb. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the International Rice Research Institute. He has a PhD from the University of Newcastle in Australia, and his expertise is in hydrology, crop modeling, data assimilation, and climate smart agriculture. The second speaker will be Dr. Swatantra Kumar Debe. He's a senior specialist in economic modeling at the International Rice Research Institute. He's based in India. I should say Praloy is also based in India. Swatantra has a PhD in environmental science from the Central University of Rajasthan, Rajasthan. And his research interests are very varied, from everything from water quality to water resources management, hydrological and crop modeling, economic modeling, and climate change. So with that, I'll remind you just please put any questions you have in the Q&A, and I'll hand over to Praloy for the first presentation. Over to you, Praloy. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you very much. I think you have given the brief. It's not only our brief introduction, but also I think you have set up the problem statement as well that we are looking into. So here is my title that I'm going to talk about. It's on reversing the groundwater depletion in Northwest India. Some of the insights from our studies, which includes some agricultural interventions, and also the potential opportunities on how to reduce the declining groundwater table. So first and foremost, what is the groundwater situation in Haryana? We have been talking about it a lot, particularly in Haryana. Multiple news media agencies and magazines have highlighted this in the past, over the last maybe a decade or so, that these groundwater table has been depleting at an alarming rate. As Matthew mentioned, it's almost like approximately 3 meters per year, which is very scary. And it's not only the media that they are looking into, but also several researchers across the world. They're also investigating this. What are the different, how it has changed spatially and temporarily over the time. This is a recent paper that I came across, maybe published 2 years back, where they have identified the trends in groundwater storage, and they have highlighted that prior to 2001, there was an increase in the groundwater storage. However, post 2001, when the intensification of paddy cultivation took place, particularly in Haryana, the groundwater storage has started declining at an alarming rate, at the rate of 32.30 cubic kilometers pre-monsoon, whereas post-monsoon it was approximately 24.42 cubic kilometers throughout the whole 20 years period. Now, this is an alarming situation and a very scary direction that we are moving ahead. Many of the researchers have looked into what are the potential causes, and also what are the different options that we have. Do we need to change some of the practices that we, in the business as usual scenario, that we need to change in order to reduce the groundwater declination? So some of the causes were, after the Green Revolution that happened back in 70s and 60s, crop intensification took place, and primarily the paddy and wheat system, which dominated the region. And most of the majority of the farmers, they opted for the puddle transplanted rice, where a clay layer is created artificially by different management practices, and based on which the clay layer, because of the clay layer, the water infiltration restricts, and also it includes ponding of water throughout the entire season. So because of which, to keep the water ponded, the water was pumped significantly, and the volume of water was given to the field, and which was lost in evapotranspiration. That is how we actually came up to this situation that we are in today. And what are the different options that we have? If we look into literature, they have highlighted adoption of some of the water saving alternatives, such as the direct seeded rice, as Matthew mentioned, which reduces the number of irrigations as well as the volumetric water supply for irrigation. In addition to that, shifting from the long duration rice varieties, such as Pusa 44 is one of the widely grown rice variety in this region. The farmers have realized it, and even the government is asking the farmers to move ahead from this towards more short duration rice varieties, which seed to seed duration is approximately 120 days, such as for non-Basmati is PR 126, and Basmati it's PB 1509. Some of these varieties might also reduce the shorter duration period of the paddy, and also the number of irrigation and the amount of irrigation is reduced. Delayed sowing, the general practice is that by the first week of May, some of the farmers go for DSR, which actually, because the onset of monsoon is around mid of June, so there is like almost 40-45 days when the farmers intensively irrigate. And that's also a peak time when the summer is intense, because of which irrigation requirement is higher. So if we shift the planting date, that might also aid in, there is basically a study which identified that might reduce the groundwater pumping. Now for today's talk, actually, I'm going to focus primarily on two objectives. The first one, do we really boost the water productivity? And if so, how much water irrigation water productivity can be boosted if we shift from puddle transplanted rice to DSR? And also, what are the variables which govern the irrigation water productivity from farmers' field? Now, whatever I have talked prior to the objectives before, these are all based on the positive sides of DSR is all based on field experiments that we do under controlled condition, where optimal irrigation, fertilization, and everything is given. But in farmers' practice, it's not actually applicable. The farmers divert from these recommendations, and we actually looked into how much really water saving can be done from farmers' field. So why do we need to focus on DSR? As I mentioned earlier, that it reduces the irrigation volume as well as the number of irrigations, because when we don't go for transplanting, we actually, when you sow the seed directly in the soil, it germinates and it just grows, the rice just grows there. But if we transplant, there is a transplanting shock also, and then the seedlings need to adapt to this environment, the new environment from in the transplanted condition, which actually delays like 7 to 10 days additional irrigation is needed for that. So yes, there is water saving in DSR. But again, the Haryana government has also has been incentivizing the farmers approximately $80 per acre if they shift from parallel transplanted rice to DSR. Now, the important and most critical thing in the left-hand side, you can see, if we simply talk about DSR, it is not going to save the water unless and until we use the water management strategies like optimizing the irrigation frequency, optimizing the irrigation duration. That's most critical. On the left-hand side figure, then the bottom, you can see without any optimization of water management strategies, the water table will keep on declining, and maybe at a faster rate compared to the parallel transplanted rice, because there is no clay layer, and then the water will not, the water will disappear or infiltrate immediately, and the farmers will tend to irrigate more. So this is something which is very crucial, that we have to identify the irrigation frequency and the irrigation duration. Now, for this study under Nexus Gains initiative, we actually considered 4 districts in Haryana, in the eastern side of Haryana, from where the water actually drains into the Ganges River Basin. Our primary focus in Nexus Gains was Ganges River Basin. So these are the 4 districts, and in collaboration with our national partners, particularly the Krishi Vigyan Kendra, as Dr. Sandeep mentioned. Special thanks to Yamunanagar, Karnal, Panipat, and Sonipat. We could identify the farmers, and we installed the water flow meters to monitor how much volumetrically water they're irrigating in their field. We installed 50 water flow meters. We identified 25 for DSR and 25 for parallel transplanted rice farms. And also we developed a protocol based on which we actually installed the water flow meter exactly at the outlet of the pump, so that if there is any loss within the system from the pump until the outlet, that can be eliminated, and we can get the exact amount of water that is supplied in the farms. We also tried to target as many farmers as possible who are cultivating or going into the short duration varieties, to compare both basmati and the non-basmati rice varieties here. Now, here is the preliminary result from last year. Actually, this is from 2023. The most striking thing here is that in case of DSR, the farmers tend to irrigate more in terms of millimeter depth of irrigation or even volumetrically for individual irrigation per hectare. This is in contrast to what we observe. Generally, we perceive that DSR will save water. Here we can see here clearly that for DSR, in case of Karnal district, the irrigation individual or the average irrigation application per hectare per irrigation is 225.9, whereas in case of PTR is 160. So for individual irrigation, the similar trend can be seen in all the cases. But total overall, if we see for the entire season, the total amount is lesser in case of DSR. The amount of water that is pumped out, it's lesser in case of DSR, because we save 3 to 5 irrigations for each farm or per hectare. So cumulatively, this actually reduces the volumetric water that is pumped out. And we can see that the yield is at par for both DSR and PTR cases. This is average value from all the farmers that we have. The 50 farmers from each of the districts is represented here. And it ranges from 4.8 tons per hectare in case of Panipat to 6.3 tons per hectare in case of Yamunanagar. Coming to the next slide, we can see that here I have shown the results from Karnal and Panipat districts, 2 districts here, the irrigation water productivity. The figure shows what is the distribution of irrigation water productivity throughout the 2 seasons in these two districts. We can see the median value and the percentile 25 to 50, 75 percentile irrigation water productivity that's higher in case of DSR compared to PTR. And this is based on 100 farmers from these two districts, the same farmers for who were going for DSR and PTR. So overall, we can see an improvement ranging from 18% to 50% even, the irrigation water productivity. And yield, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, that it's at par for both DSR and PTR establishments. Now, the second thing that we looked into, we tried to identify what are the variables or the drivers of irrigation water productivity. To identify that, we had the irrigation water productivity and we applied a mixed method approach where both quantitative and qualitative analysis was done based on the data collected. For the quantitative analysis, we had the variables and also the data were collected throughout the whole season for both the years. And for the qualitative assessment analysis, we targeted 50 farmers. We tried to keep it like half DSR and half PTR, but later on we had to shift to more DSR, slightly more DSR, like 60% DSR farmers and 40% PTR farmers across the 4 districts. And we analyzed using content analysis where the word frequency was identified, analyzed, and also thematic analysis. So based on the most frequent keywords, we divided into different themes. And then we represented those results and tried to merge with the quantitative analysis that we did. So the different variables for quantitative analysis that we accounted for here are date of sowing or transplanting, the antecedent root zone soil moisture. Antecedent root zone soil moisture is the average soil moisture post wheat season and pre-paddy season. So what is the average soil moisture during that entire season, that period or duration? This data was collected from remote sensing information. In addition to these, we also had variables such as number of plots that were irrigated by each tube well, and then the well depth per unit area, another variable, pump size per unit area, and these are all the farm intrinsic variables, whereas extrinsic variables such as mostly on weather side, diurnal temperature, sunshine hours, and also we included precipitation. However, we found that precipitation has a correlation with the temperature, so we eliminated the precipitation variable in this analysis. We organized the focus group discussion for the qualitative analysis, targeting some of the important questions like when do the farmers decide when to irrigate, how do the farmers decide when to irrigate and how much to irrigate, and does electricity play any key role in their decision making? What is the average NPK, fertilizer application, and herbicide application rate? So both the yield variable as well as the water variable in the irrigation water productivity were targeted here. Now, these are the results of the quantitative analysis that we did based on all the variables. We found that antecedent root zone soil moisture and the date of sowing critically affect the irrigation water productivity in case of DSR. Whereas the number of plots per tube well, that is the most critical factor governing the irrigation water productivity in case of PTR. In addition to this, we also found that diurnal temperature, the difference between the maximum and minimum temperatures, they affect the PTR, the irrigation water productivity in case of PTR. In addition to this, based on the word frequency analysis, we found that some of the key words that the farmers mentioned in case of DSR are mostly focusing on the soil moisture. They identified based on the color of the soil, so mostly tannish when they observe, or the soil moisture, particularly like when they walk in the field. If they don't see their footprint, then it's the time to irrigate. These are some certain sort of experiences that they shared that govern the time of irrigation or irrigation scheduling. In addition to this, power, definitely power and voltage, mostly energy side. Like there is a power cut, then they have to irrigate prior to the power cut when they encounter. So this is also another critical factor that governs the irrigation frequency. In case of PTR, puddle transplanted rice, mostly they follow a certain criteria of this much depth of water or this many hours of irrigation that they need to conduct for each individual irrigation event. Some of the farmers mentioned every day they irrigate to maintain a particular level of 15 centimeters of water in the field. Similarly, like 2.5 hours of is required to fill up my farm. So these are some of the key keywords that we identified. Based on
Praloy,
this,
could you try and wrap up, please? Just
sure,
60 seconds or so. Thank you.
sure. I mean, right in the last slide, actually. So in addition to this, we also identified, based on the keywords, we identified the themes. Some of the themes, such as soil factors that govern the irrigation frequency. And also we identified there are co-variables actually that among the DSR and PTR that govern the irrigation duration and the frequency here. As we can see, energy in case of irrigation duration can be seen both in PTR and DSR. Similarly, the weather variable, both in irrigation frequency and in case of DSR and PTR. So there are some co-occurrence of the themes between these DSR and PTR variable. So in summary, both the DSR improves the irrigation water productivity compared to PTR, and also the water application per irrigation we can see higher in case of DSR. And farm intrinsic variables mostly drive the irrigation decisions in the farm in the case of DSR, whereas the fixed criteria are maintained in case of PTR. We have seen significant increase in DSR area post inception of Nexus gains, like in Basi Akbarpur village in Karnal, has experienced 30% increase in DSR areas. And some of the farmers have mentioned that since the inception of DSR, they have observed, experienced water saving because they were following our instructions sometimes. Like, you don't need to irrigate this much water, you can save water. So just compared to the conventional practice, they are saving a significant amount of water. So I think that's all from my side. Now I will request Swatantra maybe to jump in and share his experiences on and his research on the crop diversification. Swatantra, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Praloy. And if anybody, just a reminder, if anybody has any questions, to put them in the Q&A, please. And over to Swatantra. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pralay, and thank you, Matthew, for giving this talk to crop diversification in the northern western India drivers and what the drivers and barriers is there. Yeah, this the study area description where we go where we do the crop diversification in this the Karnal district that is in western part of Yamuna River Basin, and also the Yamuna is coming in the northern eastern part, and Sonipat Panipat is coming in the northern part of the Haryana. And this the methodology which I adopt in the study. There is a three different categories. Why then first we identify the extreme event, that is how that extreme events is affecting the farmers to go to the one crop to another crop, and why what that they are facing the problems. And that second one also going further calculating the water yield, is that water yield is sufficient, or maybe they have to go for the other crop on the basis of that one. And third, and FGG is a focus group discussion on the crop diversification to the farmer based on the that workshop and these things. And then we have to find some drivers and barriers which we have to present in this talk. Therefore, when we go for the extreme analysis, then monthly precipitation temperature change in this, we have the 40-year RMD data, and then we have to go for the changes with respect to 90, 81 to 20 and 21 this. Then we have to find the Yamunanagar has only showing the positive trend of the precipitation, and all the districts, all the three districts, they are showing the negative trend in the July month. That is the monsoon month, but Yamunanagar only the positive side, but other district has shown the negative trend of the precipitation. But in the case of maximum temperature, minimum temperature, more or less all the districts are showing the same trend. There not much variation, but yeah, in this only Yamunanagar also is showing the little good condition in the minimum temperature and also the maximum temperature. Then we go for the early change in the precipitation temperature in extreme events. In there, we found if we go for the extreme indices, on the basis of that extreme indices, there is a total precipitation. If we see the total precipitation, there is all the showing the decreasing trend of the precipitation. Also, when we go for the intensity of the rainfall, in this, the 1 day intensity, 2 day intensity, and also the 5 day intensity is also showing the decreasing trend. Like if there is a precipitation events that come frequently, but right now it's not more effective. And if we go for the maximum temperature and minimum temperature related thing, then it's showing the positive trend. Like maximum temperature is increasing, and also the minimum temperature here also increasing. So these are the some factors that also have to consider for the how the farmers going for the changing the crops, and that also affect the diversification of the crop in the wheat rice system. Then second one, for we see the decadal change of the runoff, surface runoff and groundwater runoff. In this, you see in 1981 to 90, if we go for the this scenario, there is a Yamunanagar, Karnal, and Panipat, Sonipat, and they are in this region. But in a recent decade, it's showing all are showing the surface runoff losses in this, and same situation are coming for the groundwater. If you see the in the previous the in the 2001 to 2010, the Karnal is going for the lower side, like depleting the groundwater. Also runoff is more. But when we go for the recent decade, it's showing the more groundwater that is decreasing in the districts. Also, then we go for the water yield change. Then same situation is found in 1981 to 90. If we go for that is reference, there is a much changes in the 2021 to 2020. These are the changes is this result which we have to use for the certain. Then we go for the crop diversification and its challenges using the farmer perspective. In this, we go for the some questionnaires based, and we have to find out to what extent farmers are aware about the crop diversification. What challenges do the farmer face when trying to diversify the crop system, and also what support would help to overcome these challenges, and also how do they perceive about the impact of crop diversification on farm productivity and income during the changing climate conditions. Also, what are their deciding factors while they're adopting the new crops or diversifying the current crop mix. Then in that we have to already we have conducted like a series of the workshop. In that workshop, farmers and also the KVK subject matter specialists are there. They provide their the inputs in the crop diversification. In this, I'm using the expert based that matrix scores, where we give these matrix scores to the farmer to if you want to change rice to other crop, then which crop you have to change and what you have to give the score. Like this, there is some example, like some farmers are saying, okay, I'm going to the rice to bajra, then also they have to go for the sugar cane, and also some are saying, okay, I'm going for the rapeseed or mustard related thing. So these are the these are the example. Like this, all the 40-50 farmers, they are giving some ranking. On the basis of that ranking, we have to adopt some short duration rice variety, and then driving the farmer's plot, and also diversifying the rice to other crops. So these are the some like questionnaires. On the basis of that, they give the weightage, and then on the basis of that weightage, we find that these drivers like ranking and these things about the farmer choice of that diversity. Most of the farmers are satisfied with the sugar cane, also somewhat also satisfied for sugar cane, and some saying okay neutral in that one. And also the most of the farmers are happy with the rapeseed, mustard, bajra, and also the maize. So these are the farmers which they want to diversify with rice crop in different crops. But what the factors that affecting the crop diversification, like the economic factor. In economic factor, most of the market assess and price. That is very uncertain and volatile market, and that is the alternative crops also there. The MSP also, the come under that one. Also the profit margin, because if monoculture of crop is there, then the profit is good. But if we have to go for the different crops, then there is some profit loss that will also coming that in economic factor. Also the cost input, that is also the like high cost of seeds also there, fertilizer also, that is also the cost of cultivation, that is also important, that all are coming in the economic factor. Then we go for the knowledge and technical expertise. They are also saying, okay, we have some limited understanding of the how to go for the one crop to another crop, and what that affect the alternate crop in maybe they have to losses and there, and also the climate uncertainty, they have to focus in more for the climate uncertainty. Like they have if they showing that crop and there is some temperature increase or maybe precipitation events is there, then they have the loss of this one. And also because that also affect the MSP and also the market prices. And also the infrastructures and resource constraint, that is also they have to give the like there is some less lack of the appropriate infrastructure and different crop, and also the storage and these things issues for, and transportation issue also coming for that one. And most like government policy and support, they also focus if government has some policies and they have to support on the these crop to increase the MSP, or maybe they have to promote these things too, then they definitely go for the one crop to another crop. Also the technology invention, that is also the important things. Some farmers are saying if there is some technology related things, then we have to go to see that one and also buy and go for that one also. These are some factors that are affecting the like diversification, and also the farmers' views, and also they have to choice to one crop to another crop. Then these are some conclusions on the basis of these results, like extreme weather events significantly threaten the agriculture productivity and increase the farm vulnerability in these. And so the crop diversification is essential for mitigating these impacts and to increase the farm benefits. And also we have to adoption of the crop diversification hindered by the factors such as the lack of knowledge, financing constant, that is more important, and also the adequate support from the government side, also the institutional side. And they have to the vital to develop the farm capacity for the precision agriculture development, resilience, value chains, and also empower the institution to utilize the crop diversification for the developing the sustainable livelihood in that area. These are the like research to find out the how the all the farmers they have want to the go for the one crop to another crop, but they have the factor that is more important to consider by the government also, and also the institute. Yeah, these are the some highlights of the crop diversification, and I acknowledge the CGI Nexus Gain project. Also, I'm more thankful for all the farmers, also my partners, that is CCS, Haryana Agriculture University, and also all the KVKs under these, the Yamunanagar, Karnal, and Panipat, Sonipat, and also the Soil Salinity Research Institute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. That's a very interesting presentation. Thanks a lot. So now we're going to go on to the panel discussion. We have two panel members. Apologies, I'm actually sitting in the dark because I've got a power cut at the moment. But two panel panelists. The first is Dr. Sandeep Royal. He's an agronomist serving as the District Extension Specialist and the coordinator of KVK, which is a knowledge network which provides vocational training to farm workers regarding their income generating activities. His PhD is in agronomy, and he has worked on various projects on crop residue management, water conservation, oilseed production, etc., etc. The second panelist is Dr. Manikashi Sangwan. She's an agronomist, also working. She has lots of experience, including the development of training materials, and she's worked with many different farmers on different projects. With that, I'll just like to very quickly hand over to Sandeep and what he thinks of the presentations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you again for making me a part of this very important discussion, particularly in present context. The Both the presentation by Ploy and Swatantra, they were right on the dot, and they represent what the actual situation is at the field. The topic is reversing the groundwater depletion. First, we look at why this problem has arisen. As Praloy also mentioned that this trend started, he mentioned a paper on which he stated that this problem started after 2000. But if we look at the rice wheat cropping system, it started from the mid 1960s. So the problem is earlier it was through canal water irrigation was there. But afterwards, most of the focus shifted towards you know tube wells, where water was taken from the groundwater. So that is one of the reasons that why this problem has arisen. Of course, the water guzzling nature of both rice wheat cropping system is one factor. So now, now the question is how we can reward that or at least reduce that depletion part. So, of course, there are several agronomic technologies we are discussing here today about DSR. The good thing about DSR is that it suits well with other technologies of water saving also. Because if we see that there are other technologies like alternate wetting drying is there. As Praloy also mentioned that delayed transplanting is one method. Then Swatantra mentioned that, of course, crop diversification with less water requiring crop is another option. So when we talk of, let's say, if we take example of alternate wetting and drying. So if we look at, of course, it is very visible in case of paddy, but let's say the level has reached when farmer has to apply the water. But what if there is no power supply at that time? So the soil will develop cracks, and it will be very difficult then to manage irrigation in that field. So farmer is not able to take that risk in that case. But if we see in case of DSR, since puddling is not there, so cracking problem is less, particularly in clay soils. So it matches with AWD also, alternate wetting DSR versus AWD. And as Parloy mentioned that in case of DSR, the amount of irrigation, amount of water per irrigation is higher. That is because the interval between two irrigation is more in case of DSR as compared to the puddle transplanted rice. And that's how the total water requirement comes lower in case of DSR. Because in PTR, farmer has this perception that it's a physiological condition that the soil needs to be saturated. So he applies water almost daily. Whether in case of DSR, he has this option that he can delay water. And this is very important, particularly in those years where there is a limited precipitation. For example, this year, if we see, last year, Roy has mentioned the results of last year. So last year, if we see the precipitation in Yamuna particularly, in month of July, it was around 550 mm, particularly in the month of July. And if we see for this year, for last 3 months, it's still less than 450 mm. So for particularly this year, farmers are realizing the importance of water because they don't have the power supply is limited for a few hours, and they don't have a choice how to fulfill the requirement of sugarcane as well as puddle transplanted rice. So we can say that there was also a question regarding why farmers are not shifting to DSR since the yields are almost equal. So till now we can say that the motive behind shifting, that is water saving, because this electricity is highly subsidized, power is highly subsidized. The motive for farmers, I think, is still not there with them to save the water. But as because whether we say the climate change or yeah, with increased intensity of cropping system and increase in area under cropping system. So this will ultimately force the farmers to shift towards water saving technologies. And DSR is one option because it, uh, you can say it matches with alternate wetting drying also. It matches with the short duration varieties also. We have seen in last year results. It was executed at farmer fields, and whatever variety they were taking, it was the water was calculated in those fields. And what we have observed is that short duration varieties, because they cover the soil quickly, so they have a competitive advantage over weeds also, and they are also less subject to vagaries of monsoon. So they are able to mature early. So they have performed well. Also, it is also the choice of varieties as well as hybrids. And now we have those varieties which can mature in 120 to 125 days, as mentioned by Ploy, which can give similarly yields what we were getting in 140 to 145 days. So that is one option, and that's why most of the farmers have now preference towards short duration varieties. And again, one more problem is also solved by a DSR, since there is no transplanting shock in case of DSR. So we can save around 7 to 10 days for whole of the duration. So the next crop, wheat, we have ample time for crop residue management also, which is another important factor, particularly for the northwestern India. So it matches well with the present scenario. But there are three things which are required, because we are talking about different technologies, but ultimately farmers are the ultimate user of these technologies, and whether they will able to adopt it or not, it will depend how the things will move on. So it requires three things for our technology to be adopted. First is, of course, its reception by the farmers. Then second is the policy support, and third is the technological options. In case of DSR, technological options have improved with time, because it's not a new technology. Uh, it's like even in KVK, we have been promoting it under NICRA project since 2011. But so many technology advancements has been there, whether it is in machine, whether it is in this variety selection, because we have herbicide tolerant rice also now, which was not available earlier. The herbicide options, they are also have improved with time. Then policy support is also there, as Praloy mentioned. There is around there is a subsidy for opting to DSM, but the motive uh, for farmers for water saving, it's still, I think, not there. So and there is some risk also. Farmers go for where there is no risk. Minimal risk is there. So that starts with the sowing. That starts with the. It's a technologically more, you can say, the more technology is required. So farmer may not be as interested in that. So those are some of the things why it is still not. But with time, the area under DSR is increasing. And in terms of if we talk about why the crop diversification is another option, the Sutantra has explained it very well. Uh, Again, if you see, there is a policy support from the government. There is some subsidy. It's around 17,500 per hectare for shifting to other crops than DSR. But the problem is, as Sutantra also mentioned, that the precipitation is increasing in case of Yamuna. So that again makes choice of farmers very limited, because in Yamuna, if I, for example, say it's around 1100 rainfall per year. So where we have a very limited choice for other crops which can survive in that, and paddy is one where it can survive. So we can start from technologies in rice, because it's one of the important crop where we can save the water, and then we can persuade the farmers to shift to other crops through diversification. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep. Very good. Some excellent points there. Let me just pass over to Dr. Manakshi and ask her views. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate being included in this conversation. And regarding presentations, both the presentations reflect this opportunity of DSR. It can help, DSR can help us in managing our water resources. So today's webinar, this is on reversing groundwater depletion. But if I talk about my district where I'm working, so here the situation is totally different. Here the water table is rising, and if we see the scenario of present status in the district of water table, so the total cultivated area of the district is around 127,000, out of which 30% is around waterlogged and saline area. So this is a huge number. So here the situation is altogether different. We need to work out the other options so that we can reduce this water table, the waterlogging or saline situation, where we can't take DSR. Initially, the cropping pattern of the district is most of the farmers, they used to take cotton crop and pulses like mung bean and pigeon pea and other crops. But now the situation is totally different. Most of the farmers, they are shifted to paddy, and that is transplanted paddy. So most of the crops, they are not I have mentioned, cotton and pulses. Farmers, they are not growing these crops. And one more thing, we can do in this situation where waterlogging is here in our district. So one project is there, that is the CSSRI Karnal Institute, Dr. Swatantra mentioned earlier. So one project is there in a village, Kani, that is the village in district Rohtak. That project is regarding drain out of excess water, like depleting the water, because the water table is high, so they are draining the excess water. So farmers, they are using that excess water, they are reusing that excess water also at the land which earlier that land was not used for cultivation. Now farmers are cultivating many crops in that area. So this type of project can work here in our district. And one more thing regarding DSR, because this is the only 30% area is waterlogged, but remaining area, many farmers, they are doing DSR. I'm working with farmers from last 7 years, and I'm using this technique every year. Like 10-20 farmers, I'm working with 10-20 farmers, they are working on DSR. So one more problem that I will mention here, we can work on it also, that is volunteer rice. It's a major issue in DSR. Like in my district, volunteer rice is a major issue, so we can work on it also. And otherwise, DSR is a very successful technique, and many farmers, they are getting more yield as compared to transplanting. So,
Okay. That's excellent. Can you just explain why is the water table rising? Why is the water table rising in some places?
I'll tell you, because the topography of Haryana, it's like ball-shaped topography. So the Haryana, my district, this is in the center of the Haryana. That's why the water table is rising.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. It's very, very good points, both of you. We just have a few minutes for quick Q&A. I think that one of there's several questions in the Q&A. Some have been answered already. Praloy's been actually typing on. I'll go to those. But Ravinder asked one question at the end, which I think is very pertinent, and that is, what are the policy interventions that could help encourage and achieve crop diversification, and maybe also would achieve perhaps more appropriate irrigation approaches from farmers. So just if you could just maybe talk about if anybody wants to speak to this, either the two presenters or the two panelists, on what do you think the policy interventions might be? What are the most appropriate policy interventions? Thank you.
Dr. Sandhi, would you like to point it out?
Yes. Yeah, Sudhandra, maybe you
No,
can.
I'm not there. You proceed. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so when we talk about crop diversification, maize has always been an option for crop diversification. But the problem is it has to match the cropping system of that particular place. Then second is whether it is procured through policy support. Rice wheat, if we see, they are procured by the government. And if I tell you that 85% of wheat and 50% of paddy, what government is procuring, that is coming from Haryana and Punjab itself, from the tiny states. So that support is there. Then if we have to look from crop specific where we want to shift. Let's say, for example, maize. Maize matures at an around September or October. And if we see, there are some hours from going when the monsoon is going away. So that creates a problem in its harvesting. Also, if it is if it is not purchased on the same day, then there is problem of its decaying. So farmers, they don't have a storage facility. If I talk about in Haryana, but right now they don't have at so much great level, they don't have a drying capacity to dry that grains. So they have that risk because they can produce, but ultimately it has to go somewhere. If there is no risk involved in that, they are ready to adopt it, because even in Haryana, as Meenakshi also mentioned, that hydrology is like that. There are some uplands, there are some lowlands. So it can be focused on uplands where we can shift to other crops. But in terms of policy, we have to at least, or we can provide infrastructure at least at block levels. So that will also provide employment to the rural youth who are running away from agriculture. And it will also provide an option for farmers to process it or to store it for some time until and unless it can be, purchased by some other agency also. So from farmer perspective, I'm saying this because I'm working with farmers. Then, of course, if we compare it with whether technology is not there, technology is also always there. When we compare with the potential of maize hybrids and rice hybrids, they are almost similar in yield. But in terms of economics, maize is more beneficial because the cost of cultivation is quite less in case of maize. But that risk, farmers are averse to risk. They need, whether it is first they like the ease. Paddy is like that, they transplant and then it's like they can go and sleep and then come for fertilizer application or an irrigation application. But in case of maize, they have to be, even in case of DSR, they have to be in the field for at least for first 30 days. So ease, and then at the produce, whether it is going easily from them. So of course, the economics is almost similar for in terms of MSP, it's similar to rice as well as maize. So that is one example. It will differ from crop to crop, and it will also differ from the cropping system, whether it is taken. Because maize has increased, the area under maize has increased in spring season. And that is because we have a considerable area under sugarcane. Sugarcane harvest around January to February. And that from February to June, that period, they shift to maize during that place. But we are not able to save water because at that time the rainfall is quite less. So it
Okay.
doesn't matches with our objective at that time.
Great. Thank you very much, Sandeep. Very detailed answer. And thank you all, everybody. I think we're just about at our limit of time. I would just like to thank both the presenters and the panelists. Excellent job. Very well presented material and useful insights coming from this work. Demonstrates, I think, the value of actually working with farmers in the field rather than just trials on stations. Obviously, big differences between what farmers actually do and what maybe is potentially achievable. And of course, it all comes down to policy and incentivizing farmers, as people have made clear in some of the statements they've made in the Q&A. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the Scriptoria for supporting this Nexus Gains talk as usual. Thank you, the audience, for joining. All the questions we'll try and answer with written replies for those we haven't reached. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much and look forward to the next Nexus Gains talk next month. Thank you all and good afternoon.